And with us today here in Mission Control to talk a little bit about that, as well as the intricacies of a Soyuz landing, is America's most experienced astronaut, Mike Fincke. Mike, glad to be with you today.
Rob, always glad to work with you, and it's a beautiful day when you can get in to be into the Mission Control Center here in Houston.
Mike Fincke, a veteran of 3 flights, 382 days in space on his 3 missions, exceeding Peggy Whitson and Mike Foale behind him. And when he lands on Sunday in Kazakhstan, Don Pettit will take up the number 4 spot on the all-time list with an aggregate total of 371 days in space. Gennady Padalka was your commander on Expedition 9 several years ago. As he takes over the reins of the International Space Station and command of the complex, what is he going to bring to the table for what's shaping up to be one of the most complicated 4-month periods in space station history?
Well, Rob, Gennady Ivanich Padalka is extremely experienced. When I flew with him, he had flown once on Space Station Mir, and that brings a lot of historical and a depth of knowledge that he brings to the space station today. And it's funny because Gennady and my paths have crossed along with a lot of these other guys here. So Gennady, I, and Andre Cowpers, we flew together for 10 days till Andre came back on down to Earth, and it's so nice to see Gennady and Andre up there. Along with my friend Oleg Kononenko. Gennady, Oleg, and I were the original Expedition 9 crew, and then Columbia happened and things moved around. But I got to see Oleg on Expedition 17 to 18 transition, and of course Don Pettit and Joe Acaba both came up during my Expedition 18. So I know I've flown with 5 of these 6 guys. But about Gennady, he's has a great deal of experience, and you're going to need a really experienced guy to take you through the tougher times that are ahead. And they're not tough in terms of anything except complexity. We've got a lot of stuff going on. You need to have the crew to be really ready to go, understanding what's important, what's not so important, so they can be the most efficient. And Gennady's the guy to help with that.
July and August shaping up to be extraordinarily busy for this crew, the Expedition 32 crew, who will be joined in a few weeks by Sonny Williams and Aki Hoshide and Yuri Malenchenko, also one of the most experienced space travelers on the planet. There's something like 7 or 8 different visiting vehicle comings and goings between Progress vehicles for the Russian resupply, the Japanese Konotari 3, the H-2 transfer vehicle, and then 2 EVAs, 2 spacewalks in August, one by Padalka and Malenchenko on August 16th, followed 2 weeks later by Sonny Williams and Aki Hoshide. In what we discussed earlier was the change out of that power switching unit on the truss of the station. But the business at hand over the next 48 hours is getting Kononenko, Kuipers, and Pettit home. So let's start off with what the crew is going to be doing late Saturday night, namely wrapping up their packing of their Soyuz vehicle that is docked to the Earth-facing port of the Zarya module, the Rosviet module, as well as the final farewells and the hatch closure. How complicated is all of that?
Well, in the Air Force, we used to say, hurry up and wait. So there's going to be a period of intense activity where we get the last important payloads aboard the last-minute payloads aboard the Soyuz, things like blood samples, other biological samples. That way the scientists on Earth can see exactly how our bodies look like right before we came back home. And things that that need a lot of refrigeration, so you take them out, put them in the Soyuz at the last minute. Things like making sure that you got all your gear ready to go, like your spacesuit, your underwear that you wear under the spacesuit, things like that. And so you get all that ready to go. You make sure you're ready to be on time because you don't want to be late because the Soyuz won't wait for you, kind of thing. And on the other hand, once you have that all done, then you're kind of waiting. And then what do? Well, you kind of look out the window one last time. You maybe, if you can, if there's comm coverage, you call your family, say, hey, I'm going to see you guys real soon. And it's kind of a really strange time. It's bittersweet. You say, I want to go home. I can't wait to see everyone. Can't wait for that Earth food. And then on the other hand, it's like, man, I like it up here. I just was getting good. I don't want to go. And so it's a really interesting, bittersweet time. Again, everything is in contrast. You want to stay, you want to go. You have to hurry up, but you have to wait.
Now, after 6.5 months of the spacious spread of the International Space Station, Kuipers, Kononenko, and Pettit will be in the cozy confines of their Soyuz spacecraft. They'll have to suit up. Is it a situation where it's every man for himself, or do they help each other get into their so-called launch and entry suits?
So yeah, after we've pretty much shut the hatch between the two modules, in the habitation module, kind of the one that looks like a sphere on top, we get dressed, and usually there's only room for about two people, so we help each other get dressed. So usually the commander stays there and helps the two flight engineers get dressed, and then one of them stays on and helps the commander get dressed. And it's by this time in their training, this time and everything, they're really good at getting the Sokol suit on and off. It's pretty easy to get on and off. Definitely helps when some other person's helping you. And it's just kind of funny because you're kind of floating in the middle of a module, and you can put your pants on, so to speak, the bottom half, two legs at a time, unlike here on planet Earth.
At 11:48 p.m. Central Time on Saturday night, just after midnight Eastern Time Sunday morning, the undocking will occur. The physical separation between the Soyuz vehicle and the International Space Station. Andrei Kuipers, as board engineer, will be in the left seat. Oleg Kononenko is the Soyuz commander. Don Pettit will be in the right seat. As you back away from this massive complex, the International Space Station, what strikes you after being on board? You're looking back at what has been your home for about a half a year or so. The vista of what you're seeing, the size of this thing, what is so striking about it?
Well, the Soyuz has, for the guys sitting on the side, so both flight engineers on the left seat and the right seat, they have windows. And on one hand, you say, well, they're side-looking windows, so you shouldn't be able to see the space station. And so at first, like on my first mission, when the space station was only half the size, now the only thing you could see was looking out the TV screen, the monitor right in front of you, and that's the only way you could see station. But now it's so big that you can kind of see it from the side windows, and that's what really goes through our minds as we pull away. It's like, wow, what a big space station I was living on. What a great thing that we've built, and how amazing that it's working just about all the time. Very few hiccups along the way, and it's a very beautiful piece of work. It's aesthetically beautiful. It's a special place because it was home, and it's also just amazing that it works so well, and it's so big. It's humanity's only outpost to the stars right now. It's just amazing.
Over a 2.5 hour period after undocking, the Soyuz will drift away to a distance of about 12 kilometers from the space station in preparation for the deorbit burn, which in this case will be about 4 minutes and 16 seconds in duration. You've experienced that twice. You've also been on a space shuttle for a deorbit burn, which has taken a lot of energy away from a huge vehicle heading back to Earth. Can you compare and contrast what that feels like? Is it the same kick in the pants sensation, a braking sensation?
Yeah, the deorbit burn is perhaps the most important part of entry because you're going about 17,500 miles an hour, and you're going to take it down to 17,000 miles an hour. On the Soyuz, it's 115.2 meters per second slowing down, and that helps you fall into the atmosphere a lot faster than it does on the shuttle. It's definitely a kick in the pants, but I don't remember the physical sensation as much as just the intensity of our watching, both on the shuttle and on the Soyuz, because it's such an important burn. You don't want your engines to fail on you. You're ready for, in case they do, you have the plan, you have the backup plan, you have the third backup plan, because it's so important. And so I just remember those being one of the longest 4 minutes on the Soyuz. And for the shuttle, definitely, the shuttle slows down a little bit slower, so that we have a much more gentle entry back in, only 1.2 Gs kind of maximum, whereas the Soyuz gets into 6 Gs as it slows down really fast in the Earth's atmosphere. But the deorbit burns, very intense.
It's probably worth mentioning at this point that on Thursday, a contingent of NASA support personnel that includes Peggy Whitson, the chief of the astronaut office here at the Johnson Space Center, arrived in Karaganda, Kazakhstan, in southeast Kazakhstan, to join the Rosaviatsia search and recovery forces as they are planning for their trips out on Russian Mi-8 helicopters as part of the landing support team that will recover the crew on Sunday afternoon Kazakhstan time in the wee hours here on Sunday morning. So the deorbit burn is complete. You begin to drop out of orbit. Your acceleration has decelerated now, so you're captured by the Earth's gravity and begin to drop back into the Earth's atmosphere. Some 28 minutes after the deorbit burn, your modules are separating. Uh, Walk us through that pyrotechnic experience, which has got to be something spectacular.
So you start to note that you're waiting for the first touch of atmosphere, and then the next big event, like you said, is the separation. And separation is the second really big important thing. After deorbit burn, it's a big relief, and you start feeling happy because it's like, cool, good, we have a good deorbit burn. We're going to slow down enough to hit the atmosphere, and then the separation. You have to have a good separation. We had previous flights where the separation wasn't quite right, and it took the capsule a little bit off a trajectory. The capsule backed into another mode, but it's kind of a backup mode, and landed safely. But we didn't want that to happen again, so everyone always holds their breath a little bit for separation. Separation happens. We have three modules that are together. We have the orbital living module up top. You have the entry or crew module in the middle, and at the bottom you have the service module. And we get rid of the service module. We get rid of because we don't need its engines or its oxygen anymore. We get rid of the habitation module because we've filled it up full of trash to dispose, and then the center module is the only one that remains. And once that happens, it's you don't know anything on board. You hear a few clunks. You see a little flash outside, and then you don't know if anything happens. You can't see the modules float away or anything like that because I've tried. But you do know on your panel, all of a sudden, half your electronics kind of go away because there's no long, it's all in the service module, and you can't communicate with its computer. You don't have those oxygen tanks that you can see how much oxygen they have left or anything. So that's one way we know. It's like half the computer screen goes down, or half the parameters that we look at disappear, and they say, all right, that's probably a good separation. And then you wait. Then you wait to see to start screaming into the atmosphere and lighting up the night.
As you light up the night, about 3 minutes after the module separation, you're actually hitting the first traces of the Earth's atmosphere, about 400,000 feet above the planet. Um, can you physically discern a tug against you as the start of G-forces beginning to build up in those SOCA launch and entry suits?
Well, the computers detect it before we do. We have little acceleration sensors that feed our computers, and so we start to see one light that kind of flashes. It flashes every 6 seconds for let's see, how is it? 6 times a second if you have 1G. So you have to do some math in your head, but it's a old Soyuz way of doing things, and that accelerometer tells you how many Gs you're pulling, and then the computer screen calculates that for you. But you can see that light blink, and the first blink, everyone's all right. Now we're getting close, and then things start to build up relatively quickly, and you start to really tell not by the feeling in the seat of your pants, but you start to see light around you, even if you're in the dark part of the planet, because you're actually, I don't know, plasmifying, burning the atmosphere, stripping it of its electrons, and it's just you're going so fast, the atmosphere is in great shock, and so you're making a big ball of plasma around you, and you can see that right out your window, and it's really hot. And so thank goodness the Soyuz has a really nice heat shield on it. The heat shield is a ablative heat shield. That means it melts away, takes the heat away with it, and you can actually see pieces of your spacecraft kind of melt away around you, and it comes out in beautiful colors, red and green. So maybe it's kind of like a early 4th of July for Don and Andre and Oleg. They can kind of see little fireworks outside, and it's just amazing when you look out the window. You realize that's all happening maybe a foot and a half in front of your nose.
One final part of this, the e-ticket yet to come, is the deployment of the parachutes. Again, the e-ticket described by several astronauts as one of the wildest rides of all, when the chutes begin to deploy and you're cantered and cocked to an angle, and then you rotate around. And walk us through all those types of gyrations as you settle down under the chutes for the final few minutes before touchdown.
Yeah, one reason why this is so exciting for us is because this is the third big thing that needs to happen. Have a good deorbit burn, good module separation, and then if parachutes come out, then you know you're going to land somewhere, and you're going to be fine because you need the parachutes. So it's a big relief when they start to come out. However, the parachutes are not at the very top of the vehicle at this time. The parachutes are off to the side. We need the top of the vehicle for the hatch to get between modules and things like that. So the parachute kind of pops off to the side, which kind of spins us around. and then eventually it hooks itself to the top of the module, and then we get nice and calm. It's that period of time where you can imagine being in a weightless environment for 4, 5, 6 months, and not having any gravity on you, and going through 4, 5, 6 Gs as you slow down in the atmosphere, and then all of a sudden they start whipping you around like I guess a dog with a rag doll or something like that, and it's very disconcerting at first, but it's also very happy time because you know the parachutes are coming out. You need to have the parachute. So I remember Gennady and I, when we landed on Expedition 9, we were whooping it up, literally saying "Woo, yeah, hey!" as we were spinning around, and it lasts for a little bit. Some people feel it lasts a lot longer than it really does, because it is very interesting, especially not being in gravity, to be all of a sudden shaking around. But when it's all said and done, you're kind of calm. The parachutes have rehooked themselves on top, and you're gently floating down to the ground, and it's a big sign of relief because I'm coming home.
At this point, the Russian Mi-8 helicopters and the search and recovery forces are circling in a racetrack pattern around the intended nominal landing zone, and they're just waiting for you guys to show up. You're in your seats, you're reclined on custom-made Soyuz seat liners that have cushioning capability, and then in the final seconds, literally the few seconds before touchdown, soft landing engines, boom, one more opportunity for a sensation that is not common. So explain to us what happens here with your seats, with the soft landing engine firing, and finally the touchdown, assuming that conditions are calm, which they're expected to be, by the way, on Sunday at the landing site.
It's great to know that conditions are supposed to be calm. If it gets a little too windy, that makes it just a little more complex. But we're on our parachutes. Things have calmed down, and you're absolutely right. The next big step is the helicopters. In fact, I remember you were on some helicopters for getting ready for me to land a couple of times, and it's always nice to know your friends are out there looking for you. The search and rescue crew, they're some of Russia's finest, and we know that we're in good hands with them. To find us and to get us out of our capsules correctly, and we know most of those guys already. We've met them before, so it's you kind of know you're gonna be met by some friends. So that's exciting. So you're listening for be able to talk to the helicopters on the radio, and it's important to talk to the helicopters because they give us one piece of information that's really important, and then they also can watch us if we're lucky. They can tell us what the local altimeter setting is, what the pressure is on the planet below, and that way we can use our onboard instruments, because we don't really have a radar altimeter that tells us how far above the ground we are, but we can measure the pressure outside and compare it to what it is on the surface to tell us how high above the ground we are. Most airplanes have this kind of capability. In addition, the commander has kind of like a parachuter's watch, and so he also can put in the pressure setting from the ground onto it, and he can tell us how high above the ground we are. So between the computers and the parachute watch, we know about how long it is to landing. Sometimes we land just right around sunrise, so it's kind of dark outside. Sometimes I'm like on my second mission, it's right in the middle of the day, and you can kind of look out and guess how far above the ground you are. But that's what we're starting to think about next. Okay, when are we going to land? Where are we going to land? Do the helicopters know where we are? And once that all kind of works together, it's a nice relaxing feeling. In fact, we're floating down to us so slowly compared to how fast we were going before. It's like, well, I wonder if we'll ever get there. The last 500 feet are the longest in terms of time. So as we get close to the ground, our seats actually automatically kind of push up. So all of a sudden, whereas we're maybe our noses are about a foot from the dashboard in front of us, the cosmonaut panel, the control panel, all of a sudden we're 3 or 4 inches away from it, and that the seats cock up so that as soon as we hit the ground, it'll reduce the force, a big shock absorber. So we know that that's a big sign that things are going to happen. And then also right before we land, there are those soft landing engines. Now the thing about the soft landing engines, this is my personal experience. Everybody has a different experience, but the soft landing engines, I never felt them. I never saw them. I know they worked because I saw the bottom of the spacecraft and you could see that the engines had fired. But they have a gamma ray altimeter that 1 meter above the ground they ignite. But we're going down so fast, and then it happens right before we hit that there's a that flash of light, and that deceleration feels a lot like we just hit the ground. And so, sure enough, we hit the ground. It feels pretty hard, like we hit like if you're in a car going about 20 miles an hour, hitting a wall or something. But it's amazing. The seats really absorb the impact, and we roll around a little bit, and there we are. And just a few minutes later, on both my experiences, there was the rescue crews were there to meet us. And again, our friends are out there for us, and we're in good hands.
And one characteristic for our viewers to keep in mind is that because of the altitude of the space station at about 250 miles and the look angle of the trajectory of the Soyuz during its entry, there could be, likely would be, some periods of blackout in the communications between the crew on board the Soyuz TMA-03M and what amounts to a couple of flying command and control aircraft, Russian Antonov aircraft, that would relay status reports, if you will, to the Russian flight control team at the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov outside of Moscow. Mike is going to pick up his microphone here. No soft landing engines fired this time. And we'll get Mike back in the saddle here in a second. Once you land, then the helicopters in sequential fashion will land in a circular pattern around the capsule. And it's really only a matter of minutes before they begin to disposition the initial extraction of you guys from the Soyuz to put you in reclining chairs and then bring you into medical tent. So walk us through a little bit about the aftermath of landing. How do you feel and the sensations of smelling fresh air on the Earth and all of the earthbound smells that you will smell, grass and so forth, in those first minutes?
So it's really it's a sign of, I don't know, for me it was always relief. It's like, hey, we're back home. No, and there's people outside. They're going to take care of things, so I can kind of relax and not have to worry anymore and not have to do any duties. The commander has to, of course, as soon as we land on the parachutes, we don't want the parachutes dragging us around in case it's windy. So the commander hits a parachute release cord, and it goes, and the parachute becomes released, and then we just wait for the ground guys. We have the ability on board. I think Don Pettit needed this on his last Soyuz landing to be able to climb out ourselves in case the search and rescue guys are unintentionally delayed. But on the other hand, most of the time, not always, those guys are there for us. So we just sit and relax and wait. Though you can hear them outside, and they start knocking on the hatch. We kind of reach up and knock back a little bit, so they know we're okay. And then what happens is that they take out the commander first. They open the hatch. They have to take out some payloads that are in the way, just because it's a very narrow opening, and they make some room. So they take out a few of the things that we had packed with us. They get that out of the way, pull out the commander first, and then usually we get the right seater out, and then the left seater. I was left seater both times I landed on the Soyuz, so I was always the last guy out. I always kind of felt a little bit proud about that. It's like, hey, this is the Soyuz took us into space and brought us safely back home. And good job to the Russian engineers, good job to our team to get us back safely. And so I was always, kind of proud to be the last guy coming out. And then you come out and it's like light outside. There's so many people there. It's like I haven't seen this many people in months, and they're all happy to see you. You're happy to see them. You smell the completely beautiful fresh air in Kazakhstan, and it's like, wow, it's good to be back to planet Earth. I always wanted to get up and walk around. I was so happy to be back in there. Oh, you can't, just be careful. They don't want us to fall and break a leg or anything like that. So they carry us and put us in some seats and take our blood pressure and make sure we're okay. And we sit there, and one of the first things that happens is there's always someone there with a telephone. They say, hey, you want to go call your wife? And getting a chance to talk to our families from planet Earth saying, honey, I'm home, is a really good feeling.
And once the crew has been brought into this inflatable medical tent at the landing site to get out of their launch and entry suits into more comfortable clothing, each of the crew members will be flown in 3 different helicopters, in this case back to Karaganda, the staging city for Sunday's landing operations. Kuipers and Pettit will board a NASA plane to fly back to Houston. Kononenko will board a Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center plane to fly back to Chkalovsky Airfield outside of Star City, and a return and a reunion with his family back at Star City, along with other Russian officials. Mike, appreciate it very much. Soyuz landing day is always, it's a long day, but it's a very interesting day and a rewarding day, culminating a 6.5-month mission for Petit, Kuipers, and Kononenko, the start of a new increment on board the International Space Station. It's hard to believe it's been almost 13 years since the space station was permanently occupied, with Bill Shepard and Sergei Krikalev and Yuri Gudzenko, and the beat goes on with an unbroken presence on board that international outpost. Thanks very much for joining us today, Mike. Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Rob. And it's a great adventure that we're on, and it's always a pleasure to get a chance to share it with our friends on NASA TV and give them the bird's eye view or the first person view on it. And like you said, we've been doing the space station for a long time, and it's just amazing what we have accomplished, and looking forward to the future.
Mike Fincke with us today. Thanks very much, Mike.